In this edition of Region Sports Desk, we have 20 teams left in the tournament. 10 of them will be punching their tickets to Indy this weekend. Welcome to Region Sports Desk. Bob, JT, Bob. Here we are, semi-state week.
And we're done. Well, the region is done.
Yeah.
It's like a steak. It's done.
Wasn't.
I mean, at least all of the three teams that we had left went down fighting at least.
Yeah.
Crowd put together a great effort. They just couldn't move the ball on Penn, but that was a game where that was within their grasp in the fourth quarter. Wheeler, I think, got bid in by a touchdown right at the end of the half. I think with about 3 seconds left. And then Bremen had a big second half. And Morton had their opportunities against Southern Washington, but they had some key turnovers at very inopportune times. And Southern Washington was able to make some big plays to go on to the semi-state round. So Northwest Indiana is done. We still have 2 weeks of the state tournament. But to the three teams that went the furthest, I know Morton was the last team, I think, standing at the 3 because I don't think our game ended until about 10 o'clock last week. But to the 3 teams that made it, congratulations. And to all the student athletes who played this year, congratulations on making it through. And hopefully you had a great time. I know maybe some teams lost more than they would, but there was not quite the experience more than high school football. I know you've been through it for a few years, and you'll take lessons from that will last your entire lifetime.
I'll tell you what, this year, I think the run that Wheeler made in the playoffs, we've heard so much about them not getting respect because they don't play a good schedule. I think this year, especially, I've been roaming around the message boards, and there were some people that attended that game on Friday, and I think they won the respect of a lot of people because I don't think anyone was expecting Wheeler to put up as good of a fight as they did against Bremen. And really, a couple plays here or there, it could have been a ball game there at the end. A couple of turnovers, and let's face it, Bremen had an excellent offense, great game plan. But I think Wheeler won the respect of a lot of people, and I think Morton 3 years in a row, 3 straight sectional championships. I don't think we can doubt the Governors anymore. I mean, going into next year, I think Morton's definitely going to be a team to look out for again in 4A.
They're going to have some key graduation losses, but obviously we'll talk to that about that when we get to that point here, and I don't think it'll be this week. But obviously we got 10 games this week. Unless you're a fan of South Bend or Lafayette, those are the closest teams here to Northwest Indiana, but still, I always like to say the road to Indianapolis, it's like going down I-65. The whole state tournament's like going down. This week is the unkindest cut of all because you're so close to getting to state finals. You're so close. I went through this as a student 20 years ago, Griffith High School. We were 1 game away, and not only were we a game away, we were a quarter and a half away from getting to Indiana. We had a 2-touchdown lead at home against Bishop Dwenger, and those damn Saints came back and pulled out a running shoe with damn Chris Ditto, and we lost 27-21. And if you're a Dwenger fan out there, I apologize. I'm just still mad about this 20 years after the fact, and I wasn't even on the field, folks. But it's one more off ramp. Half of these teams are going to fall 1 game short, and it is the cruelest cut of all.
Well, let's start Class 1A. We'll start in the north. Sheridan at Lafayette Central Catholic. These are really, over the last several years, probably the last 7-8 years, these have been the 2 dominant powerhouses in Class A football.
43-game winning streak for Lafayette Central Catholic. Who was the last team to beat them? Sheridan.
Sheridan Blackhawks.
In the 2008 section.
So Sheridan has made a nice run once again in the tournaments. They took care of, I think it was South Adams last week.
Adams Central,
Adams Central,
yeah, 56 to nothing. But
Well, I mean, look at some of the point totals. I mean, they've scored over 40 points a game every week in the tournament so far. This is a whole new monster having to travel on the road. We know what LCC has done this entire tournament the last 3 years.
You know,
does Sheridan have a shot on the road? They're a run-heavy offense. They're not a team that throws the ball very much, but they do have the winningest coach in the history of Indiana high school football. If there's anybody that could come up with a game plan to slow down the Knights, it would have to be him, right?
These teams do have one common opponent. Both of these teams have played Culver Academy. Lafayette Central Catholic only won 21-0 against Culver Academy back in week 4. Sheridan lost to Culver Academy in week 8, 42-21. So there's a 42-point difference there in there. And I think that does not bode well for Larry Bud Wright and the Sheridan Blackhawks.
Well, it doesn't, and I think overall, I mean, look at the quality. I think the best quality win for Sheridan had to have been that win at Tipton back on the 30th of September. They lost 2 games against 2 solid 3A schools in the first 2 weeks of the season, Western Boone and Hamilton Heights. But you look at what LCC has done. They beat West Lafayette last week of the regular season.
And they beat Garrett Catholic, who's in the 2A semi-state.
Right, so you've got 2 teams that are still playing that they beat. And you look at these point totals, and not just about the offense, but the defense. The defense has not given up more than a touchdown in any game in the tournament so far.
Only
that
3
says a lot.
only 3 teams have reached double digits on the Knights, this year. And really, you think about it, a lot of pub goes to their offense, rightly so. But defensively, they have been just as good. I think you look at their last 3 years during this whole win streak, I don't think they've given up 180 points in the last 43 games. That's how dominant they've been. They're averaging 47 points a game. The only teams to hold them under 30, the aforementioned Culver Academy and West Lafayette to close out the regular season.
So I think looking at this matchup, it's not about the offense. I think the better defense is the Knights. The Knights have the better defense. I think Sheridan is going to struggle to put up a lot of points in this game, especially if they're not balanced. They're a run-heavy team. If they have to depend on throwing the football, if they get behind and they have to throw it, I don't think that's going to bode well for them. I see LCC winning this game, maybe 28 to 35 points. Maybe not quite as lopsided as every one of their other games in the postseason has been, but I still think it's going to be a comfortable win.
October 31st, 2008 was the last time Lafayette Central Catholic lost a game, and it was in the sectional semifinal at Morocco Field. Sheridan got it done, 34-28. Keep in mind, that was a Sheridan team with Nick Zachary, but Lafayette Central Catholic was inside the 10-yard line at the end of the game. Since then, 43 straight wins. Kevin O'Shea is 52-2 at the helm. Lafayette Central Catholic, of course, for some of you who may not be familiar, Kevin O'Shea was at one time an assistant on the Crown Point staff with Brian Smith, and his dad at one time spent a couple of years as the head coach at Maryville High School in the mid-'80s too. He knows her thing. He did a nice job at McCutcheon, and McCutcheon forced him out. And look where McCutcheon's been since he got rid of Kevin O'Shea. He's 52-2. Lafayette Central Catholic. They can win the 1A championship. They would be competitive in 2A, 3A. This is going to be a 49-7 type game. I look for the Knights to take care of business.
Let's go to the South bracket. And I don't think there's much of a surprise here either. Lytton Stockton, they're undefeated. They're going to travel on the road. Indianapolis Cecina has had a real nice year as well. You look at Lytton's resume. I mean, it's pretty darn impressive. Offensively, look at they're averaging 55 points a game. Offensively, their defense giving up less than 10 points a game. What do you think?
This is going to be the best team that Lytton's played all year. They play in the Southwest 7. It's a small school conference, not exactly the best conference. They had a 28-0 win last week in regional over Milan. Meanwhile, Indianapolis Cecina with 3 losses. They lost to Speedway, who had a pretty nice year. They lost to Roncalli, and they also had a loss to Indianapolis Ritter. They was 3 decent wins as well. They had a couple of nice roles. They also have a coach who's been there and done that early. 2-time state champion coach. Back the second one was exactly go. I've heard good things from Steve Henry, my good friend down in Indianapolis, who you'll hear next week on our state finals coverage on MAB. He's telling me Cecina has an absolutely huge line. They're about 270, 280 across, which at the 1A level, hello. And also, Linton going on the road. This has been the hump they have not been able to get over. They've been in several semi-states and had their opportunities and not gotten it done. Going to the east side of Indianapolis, wherever this game is going to be played at, I don't think it's going to happen again for the Miners. I like Cecina to win this one. It's going to be a pretty good game, but I see this one being a 28-21 type ball game, and I like Cecina to win.
Well, at the beginning of the tournament, I know a lot of the teams I picked were eliminated. Of course,
You picked Lennon, I think.
yeah, I took Linton to come out of the South. So far, they've held up their end of the bargain.
My 1A South pick for before the tournament is the only one I don't have left alive. I'm sorry.
You picked Lutheran, right?
Yeah, I picked Lutheran, but I have 9 of my 10 teams still alive.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll cut some of those teams down.
We'll see. We shall see.
I'm going to stick with Linton Stockton. I'm not going to say I feel completely 100% confident, but I think they can go on road. I do see it being a much closer game than pretty much all of their games have been all season. So we'll see. Not having been battle tested, we'll see if that how much of a difference that makes in a game that could be close. I think they'll get it done on the road, but I think it's going to be a much closer game. It might be a 24-21 kind of game. I think they'll squeak one out. I think they'll be playing in the loop next Friday night. Class 2A, we'll start in the north. Bremen, they defeated Wheeler. The grand prize, they get to travel to Fort Wayne, and of course they get to play the two-time defending state champion Knights of Fort Wayne Lures. And I mean, you look at the resume, Lures has obviously played a very tough schedule. They've beaten everyone they've played in the city of Fort Wayne, and really they haven't had much trouble in the tournament thus far.
Methodical, calculating, ruthless. That's pretty much Bishop Lures here. Bob Holmes at Bremen, they are going to have their hands full on Friday. I know you were impressed with them against Wheeler, but Bremen's not playing Wheeler this week.
No, they're not. And I tell you what, I was impressed. Their offense is so balanced, and they do a lot of. They have a lot of different things. They're not a one-dimensional team by any means. But I will say, their defense did give up a lot of yards. Wheeler was able to move the ball up and down the field. And I think the difference in this game, Lures has athletes that are comparable to, top 10 5A schools, let alone Class 2A. And I think Bremen's going to struggle defending those athletes all over the field. Obviously, you have a player like Jalen Smith, both sides of the ball.
Don't forget Napgate, quarterback, who is very solid. And one thing, Bremen is a mirror image team of Lures. Bremen's a balanced team. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball. Same thing with Lures. Matt Lindsay, who's been there and done that, he believes in offensive balance. And it's not just Jalen Smith. He's got about 3 or 4 other guys that can carry the base game too. We saw that last year.
Right, he's got an excellent receiver, I believe, Mike Rogers, and of course the quarterback Napke. So you've got some legitimate Division I talent. You don't see a lot of that at the 2A level. I think that the speed, athleticism of the Knights is going to be a little bit overwhelming for Bremen. They haven't played a team that's anywhere near on the level that Lures is. I think it's going to be a very tough game for the Lions on the road. I'm going to go ahead and take Lures to win this ball game. I'm going to say maybe 35-14.
I'm thinking 35-7 myself would be my type I pick here. But take nothing away from Bob Holmes. He's had a great run at Bremen. They're back in the semi-state. This is the first trip to the semi-state since 1997, I want to say. But they lost to their arch rival, the Jimtown Jimmy. But Fort Wayne Lures, it's just loaded. This is a team on a mission to try to win 3 in a row. And Matt Lindsay getting close. He's getting up there in state championships himself up there. I want to say he's got about 7 or 8 championships himself. And he's closing in on a rarefied air, that cat.
completely agree. Lures is going to take care of business. Let's go to the bottom half of 2A.
And this is the only Saturday game, by the way, of the semi-states. We're playing Saturday afternoon at the High School this
I don't know. I thought there would be more Saturday games, but I think a lot of it has to do with, not really large distances between most of these teams. But Gary Catholic going to head on the road, play at Mater Dei, and I think Mater Dei is kind of the south version of Fort Wayne Lures, especially when you look at the conference they play in. They're playing up almost every week, and I'm really impressed when you look at their schedule. You Evansville Memorial, Evansville Rights.
Castle was their only loss, and they lost that one in double overtime.
So, and certainly a couple of the games they played in, the North Posey game, South Ridge. Those are two of the bigger powers in the South in 2A. They've had a very impressive run.
Garrett Catholic's had a pretty decent season. Don't forget, this was a team that was in the 1A semi-state last year and had a 20-0 lead at Fountain Central and then let it slip away. This time they got to go back on the road, heading down to the Wrights Bowl. Their losses on the season, they lost to Lafayette Central Catholic, they have a loss to Chittard, and they have a loss to Indianapolis Lutheran. Some of their key wins on the season include wins over Heritage Christian, a Greenwood team that really put together a great effort against Cadego in the sectional final, and a Brebeuf Jesuit Ball Club. They also avenged that ball. They also have another win over Heritage Christian. That was in the sectional semifinal round. The thing that concerns me about Garrett Catholic, you haven't played good competition, but they've been giving up some big point totals during the course of the season, especially in the tournament. 38 points in that overtime win over Heritage Christian, 20 against Shenandoah, 27 against South Putnam. They're going against a modern-day team in the ball, a spread team with speed. It could be a recipe for disaster for Andrew Kramer and the Garrett Catholic Golden Eagles.
I think you're absolutely right. They're defensively on the season, they're giving up just under 21 points a game.
But again, part of that's who they're playing too. That's not forgetting.
They have played a strong schedule. But what I will say, they lost to Lutheran and they lost to LCC. I think Lures, or not Lures, I think Mater Dei is a step above those level teams. They gave up high point totals to those teams. I don't see it being any different this week. I think Mater Dei is probably going to put up at least 35 points.
At least.
Yeah, I think they'll take care of. I think they're going to take care of business. The matchup that I think a lot of people wanted to see in 2A, it's going to happen. Lures of Mater Dei, they're going to meet in the Dome.
Only one team the entire season has held Mater Dei to under 33 points. And that was Evansville North. There was a 5A school who had it all right here at 5-5. But think about that. Other than that, in 13 games, Mater Dei has scored 33 points or more. That's something to think about there right now. And of course, I predicted Mater Dei Lures beforehand, and it would be an interesting matchup. Of course, if it comes to pass, it would be the third time Lures and Mater Dei have hooked up in the state finals with a couple of really, the first time Mater Dei just blew them out of the water. It was 56-10, Mater Dei. The first time, that would have been in the year 2000, and then the following year, Lures got their revenge. 57-29 in a game that was 36-29, I think, with about 4 minutes left in the game, and then the wheels fell off for Mater Dei.
Well, let's see if these two teams can take care of business here in semi-state. Let's move up to 3A. The North game, that game will be on Mid-America Broadcasting.
Myself and Tim Galt from legendary School Field.
West Lafayette, South Bend St. Joe, and really the last two representatives from the North in Class 3A, they'll clash to see who can represent once again. And I tell you what, St. Joe's had a really impressive run.
They've only given up 3 touchdowns the entire postseason, and they have shut out 3 of their last 5 games.
Well, the two best teams that they played in the tournament, they shut both of those teams out. Playing at Jimtown, shutting them out, and obviously Mishawaka Marion, the rematch of the game that they lost earlier in the season.
West Lafayette's defense, they ain't too bad either.
No. That Hamilton Heights and Western Boone, those were 2 huge victories, and then obviously Belmont, who was in the final, who won the state championship, what was it, 3 years ago?
Yep.
So West Lafayette, no slouch either.
Yeah.
Both of these teams kind of like to sling the ball around.
Yeah, West Lafayette is a spread team. By the way, only one team has scored over 20 points on West Lafayette all year. That was Lafayette Central Catholic in final week of the regular season. Western Bruin and Hamilton Heights, other than that, single digits across the board, the whole slate here for Marshall Holy and the ball club. West Lafayette, or South Bend St. Joe, kind of made that transition. A few years ago, they were a true high option team. Last year, on their march to Indianapolis, they were a balanced team that would do some spreads, some capable running backs as well. The only losses on the season for St. Joe, Mishawaka Marion and Penn. They eventually Marion lost with a win in the sectional final. And last week, coming off a 21-0 blanking on the Jimtown Jimmies. Both of these teams play great defense. It's going to be a defensive slugfest near downtown South Bend at School Field. I think it's going to be a heck of a matchup. This might be a game. First team to 7 might win this game. That's how dominant the defense is. I think it's going to be slightly tad higher scoring, but I picked St. Joe before the tournament. I'm going to stick with the Indians in a slugfest. St. Joe's over West Lafayette, a 14-7 type ball.
Well, you know what? I picked Mishawaka Marion to get to the finals. They fell to the Indians in the sectional championship. But the other thing I thought was whoever was to win that section would represent the North in 3A. I'm not going to back down from that. I'll tell you what, West Lafayette's had a nice run, but I think overall St. Joe's played the better schedule. They've been more impressive, especially defensively.
And let's not forget, West Lafayette's schedule ain't too bad either.
Well, it's not bad, but I think some of the higher echelon teams that St. Joe plays probably a little bit better.
You're thinking like in Penn and Marion, and one team that they did not play in the Northern Indiana Conference this year on their schedule was Washington.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting game had they played. But you know what? This team obviously has a lot of experience from last year. I think they brought back I know they lost the quarterback, and I think they lost a few other pieces, but I think that added experience from having been there last year.
And I got my stuff from West Lafayette today. They still got some key contributors that are still starting for them that saw major minutes on their state championship team 2 years ago too. So.
But I will agree with you. I think this is going to be a very close competitive game. And I do think the defenses will probably hold the offenses down a little bit. But I'm with you. I'm going to take St. Joe to get it done. Playing at home, I think they are going to be able to put up enough points offensively. You might be right. It could be a 14-7 game. I will take it.
And another thing to keep in mind, too, when we get to the semi-state travel considerations, of course, there's only one Saturday game this week, but let's be honest, there is no easy way to get from West Lafayette to South Bend. I mean, there's no direct route. You're going to have to either zigzag or cut across or whatnot. It's normally, as the crow flies, it's probably about an hour and a half flight, but if you're going by car, it's about another hour tacked onto that. So that's another thing to keep an eye on, too. More often than not, you look at teams, more often than not, I think the team playing at home in the semi-state is a huge advantage.
No question about it. Let's move on to the 3A South game. The first team, obviously, Indianapolis Chatard, are a team that I think everybody expected to be in this game. But I think the team that really, up and down this whole entire tournament.
You want to talk about the team that's come out of nowhere?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've ever even heard of Corydon Central before this year.
Here's your history lesson. You know, Corydon was the very first capital of the state of Indiana.
I did not know that.
Yes, it was also the home of the late Governor Frank O'Bannon.
Do they have a history, though? Do they have any type of football?
No, this is the first time they ever won a section. Before this year. So they've been in uncharted territory. So
they're kind of trying to pull fishes here, I think.
Yeah, but of course, I want to say going into, because I have that stuff on my computer here because I'm working on a little side project of going and charting the history of schools of all time in the tournament here. And far enough along, I could look at going into this season, the all-time playoff record for Corydon Central was 7-26. That was their record all-time in playoffs. going into this year. Only one other time in their history prior to this year were they in a sectional championship game. So this year was only the second time they've ever made it to a sectional championship game. They won it. They knocked out Heritage Hills. They sent out Bob Clayton into retirement. And then last week went on the road, a huge overtime win against Evansville Memorial, who, as we know from years past, is a very solid offensive team. But now you got the big boys, the big bad bullies in Class 3A, heading down to deep South Indiana. Darren Ward and the Panthers, you had a great run. It's a great story to see Corydon Central. But you're coming up against Bishop Chatard, and by the way, here's something I found out earlier in the week. Vince Ward settled between Chatard and the early 90s Ritter. He's something like 10-1 in semi-state championship. He's only lost one game at like 9 attempts at the semi-state level. And Chatard has been dominant. I was saying, really, ever since the loss to Wanger, late in the regular season, it's been a completely different team. They held 62 on Indian Creek, and Chatard's not exactly an explosive offensive team. Chatard will put the class of Corydon Central. This is one of the rare cases where the road team, I think, will win out the semi-state. Again, they're going to be going nuts in Corydon, but Chatard, enough said, ball game. It's going to be a rematch.
Experience. I think that's going to play a huge factor here. Corydon Central, I think it's safe to say the last 2 weeks, I think they've been underdogs, and they've been able to, they've been like a cat with 9 lives. They've had a couple of lives, obviously the overtime win last week, and they had a 1-point win over Heritage Hills. And I'll say, Heritage Hills was pretty good this year, but they lost to some teams that they normally beat on a year-to-year basis. I think the streak ends this week for Corydon. I'm gonna say Chatard will get it done, probably by at least 3 touchdowns on the road.
This is gonna be like a 35-7 type game.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Let's move on to 4A. South Bend, Washington. They beat our beloved Governors last week, and now they're going to face a team that itself is, I think, in uncharted territory, Leo.
Yeah, this is their first time. Both teams in their first ever state championship game, and really it's amazing that Washington won. They had 4 turnovers last week, but they got 4 turnovers back against Gordon, and despite some of the flags, they were able to make some big plays when they needed to. I'll tell you what, the first play of offensive play of the game, Washington going into the win, and they had a 50-some-odd yard bomb to Gary Dieter. And, Alfred Jenkins, or excuse me, what am I thinking about here? Thank you very much. Really put together a very admirable effort on Gary Dieter. In fact, I guess Dieter told him after the game, best guy who's gone up against Professor this year. Held him to 4 catches for 111 yards, but Washington was able to make some big plays at key times, and Gordon had some opportunities to get back in the game, but just could not squat it up. Maybe you take it out of Leo Ball Club that has been grounding and pounding all year. Last week they got the job done at Andrews Field. That should tell you something right there. That's a very intimidating place to play. We did that one 24-12. Leo's only given up 11 points in the game. Washington has been guaranteed a trip to state, but can they get it done on the road again in North Fort Wayne on Friday? I've been on the Leo bandwagon all year. I ain't bailing right now, folks. I like the Lions to get it done. They're not going to be able to shut down Perkins and Dieter, but can Washington stop that real big pounding round game of Leo? Keep in mind, Leo would have win over Fort Wayne Wager Ball Club and a win over Northwood. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. This might be the highest-scoring game of the 10 semi-state games, I think. But I look for Leo to literally round out a win. I'm going to say 35-28.
Sticking with the Lions.
I'm sticking with them. You got to stick with them.
Yeah.
In the words of the great Abraham Lincoln, you can't change horses in midstream, folks.
Well, obviously, your horse killed my horse a couple of weeks ago, and we got to do something about that horse. And I think South Bend, Washington.
It's not the only horse that's killed a few of your horses, too.
Well, I think South Bend, Washington might be the team that could kill off your horse, possibly. They're explosive. They probably have the two best players that will be on the field.
If we want a halfway decent, because I know we're going to talk about the South matchup here, sure, but I think everybody in the runner knows who we're going to pick in the South matchup. I think if we're going to have a heck of a 4A championship game, I would prefer to see Southwood Washington win. If Leo gets there, they're just going to get killed. I'm just going to say it flat out right now, because Cathedral's run defense is incredible, and that's what Leo does. I mean, look what Cathedral did in their loss to Warren Central. They held Warren Central about 110 yards rushing. And Warren Central got about 70 on that on one play. That should tell you something. Now, if it's Southwood Washington and Cathedral, now we're talking. We might see a game like we saw last year in the Cathedral Wager game for all the marbles.
And that's kind of what I think. I think Washington would stand a better chance. They do have more explosive athletes. And certainly I think Dieter could even cause some matchup problems.
Here's your big wild card in this game. It's the sophomore quarterback, Deja Morgan. 9 of 20, threw 2 touchdowns for $175, but also 2 big interceptions that helped Gordon stay in the game last week. He's had a great year. He's closing in at 3,000 yards as a sophomore quarterback, but he's also a sophomore. Sometimes he plays like a kid. He play like a senior. Will this be the week he makes a couple of bad throws, which Leo could try to capitalize? That's going to be a heck of a matchup. Again, I stick with Leo. 2 contrasting styles, but I'm going with the home team here in this one.
I think the one thing I look at with Leo, with their schedule, they have not faced. I don't think they faced really very many opponents that are going to spread them out like Washington will, or at least have the types of playmakers that Southern Washington has. I saw Fort Wayne Dwenger play a few weeks ago. They don't have the playmakers like a Ramon Wright like they've had the last few years. Washington has some legitimate game breakers, and certainly I think Perkins is going to give them some trouble. And Dieter, throwing the ball deep. You got a team that grounds the ball a lot, but I don't think they see a lot of teams that can spread it out.
And I told this to Tim Volker in our pregame show last week, and I don't throw this off, but David Perkins is the type of talent. He would that shock me in about 5 years. He's playing on Sundays. He's that good.
Well, that's kind of where I'm going with it. I think the playmakers of Washington are going to cause some matchup problems for Leo defensively, and we'll see if Leo can take the air out of the ball, grind out some long drives, eat some clock. But I think at the end of the day, you're right about their quarterback Morgan having to play like a seasoned veteran. 9 for 20. I'm not sure that's going to cut it in this game. He's going to have to be more efficient. Can't be throwing 2 interceptions.
And also 13 carries for -3 yards last week. Had a touchdown, but he also got sacked a few times too by Morgan.
I think Southern Washington goes on the road. I think this is going to be a very good ball game, very close game, probably about a 1 touchdown game. I'll say Washington gets by Leo to set up a possible mega matchup for 4A in the Dome. I'm going to say Washington gets it done. Let's go to the South. And this is a matchup we've seen before. We've seen this movie happen 3 years ago with Indianapolis Cathedral and Columbus East. I was at that game 3 years ago. Got to see Dusty Keel take on the Cathedral defense.
I think it was a close game for a half, and the Cathedral exploded, I think, in the second half.
Basically, what happened was Columbus East actually got a lead for a little bit. I think they had like a 10-point lead. They went right down the field and scored the first couple times they had the ball. Then Cathedral played a defense that you don't see played a lot at really any high level. They played a quarters 3 deep defense, and that really slowed down the Olympians' offense, basically because they don't really run the football very much. And eventually Nick Nagin was able to pound the football down after down. The Cathedral was just able to eat the clock and wear down Columbus East defense. Now we see it with the younger brother 3 years later. This time they're on the road and Cathedral. I guess they're going to play at North Central. That's a real nice high school. Real nice feel. I like that.
We're traditionally where the North-South game's been every year.
Yeah. So now the question is, but there's no question that Cathedral is going to be the most difficult opponent that Columbus East has played all season long. The best defense they faced all season long. Can they put up those kind of numbers throwing the football with arguably the best quarterback prospect coming out in the entire country. He's rated the best quarterback, Gunnar Kiel.
And the big rumor is Mr. Kelly down the road in South Bend is very interested in him.
Yeah, he decommitted from Indiana, so certainly that would be very interesting to see if he signs with Notre Dame. But how is he going to do this week? Semi-state. Can he take the Olympians to the state finals?
It's going to be an interesting game, but again, Cathedral will be the best team that the Olympians have faced all year. You look at Cathedral, they were 0-2 out of the game, but then losing to Ben Davis from Warren Central. They also had a loss to Trinity from Louisville, who traditionally is a top 25 nationally ranked team. Look at some of their wins. They beat Chatar. They beat Dweger like a drug. You saw it in person. They got a win over Snyder, who's in the 5A semi-state. They have a win over Bowler out of Ohio. We all know how good they are. Now, they've had a couple of subpar efforts in the sectional. They only beat Rock High by a touchdown, and even though they won that Greenwood game 30-14, it was a lot closer to that game indicated last week. They took care of a pretty explosive Pendleton Heights ball club, 35-0, and I think that's something that's probably bad news for Columbus. Pendleton Heights is a team, spread, throw the ball just about every down, and they put the clamps on it. Now, granted, Gunnar Kiel is a heck of a talent. I have a little better weapons, but I think Cathedral is just a little better. And then 2 straight weeks against a pass-heavy team. Last week was a glorified practice, and they shot out a Pendleton Heights team that was scoring points in bunches. Bad news for the Olympians and Gunnar Kiel. Cathedral's going to win this one. I mean, Kiel's going to get some points on the board, but I see this being like a 38-24 type ball.
I think you're absolutely right. And when I look at the matchup, I have to think, how many teams has Columbus East seen this year that can move the football at will the way that Cathedral can? They have a huge offensive line. They have an excellent run game. And really the thing that killed Columbus East 3 years ago was Cathedral just ramming it down their throats, running the football. That, I think, is going to be a problem. So if Columbus East cannot get off to a fast start, if they don't put up a couple of touchdowns in the first couple of possessions, I think it's going to be a lot of trouble, because I think Cathedral is going to march down the field, run the football. I think they can wear down East's defense. I think I'm with you. I think it is going to be at least probably a 2 or 3 touchdown game. I think it could be pretty close for the first half, but I think the second half you'll see Cathedral start wearing down the defense, running the football. I think that'll be a difference. I'll take Cathedral. Let's move up to 5A.
Boy, how rare. We get to the semi-state. Both semi-state games are rematches of regular season games. How about that?
And really, all 4 of these teams are major powers, traditional powers in 5A football. You look at the North, Penn, Fort Wayne Snyder. I mean, over the years, these 2 programs really exemplify what 5A football is in Northern Indiana.
This is a Snyder team, JT. They were 3-4 after their loss to Cathedral, which you saw in person, and then they came so close to being 3-5, winning by 1 in overtime against Dweger. Since then, they have been on a roll. And really, they put together, arguably, their best game of the season last week by taking care of Hamilton Southeastern, who a lot of people thought was going to be the team to come out of the North at 5A.
I think they had I heard they had an injured quarterback was hurt.
Yeah, but it was a very tight game. But Snyder had a huge fourth quarter. Penn put the clamps on Crown Point last week. I think Crown Point only had about 120 yards offense, but still Crown Point really gave it a great effort. These 2 teams played way back in September 9th at Penn. It was a 31-13 win for Corey Yeoman and the Penn Kingsmen. Looking at the road here for Penn, South Bend Adams, Elkhart Memorial, Carroll, and Crown Point. Outside of the Memorial game where they gave up 28 points in the other 3 games, Penn has only given up 11 points in those 3 games. I think, normally when you get a second matchup, we talked about this during the sections, the gap's going to close a little bit. Snyder's probably playing their best ball right now, but having to go to Penn again to try to beat Penn, I don't know if the Panthers can do it. I picked Penn before the tournament to go to the 5A championship game. I will stick with the Kingsmen. It's going to be a little closer game, but I think Penn will find a way to get it. I would say a 28-17 type ball game. Penn, the Lucas Oil Stadium.
Once again, I think I'm going to have to agree with that pick. I will will say, yeah, Snyder's been playing very well. I think last week they did benefit from Hamilton Southeastern not having their quarterback. But as we've seen in years past, teams playing at Snyder in the regional, it's a tough go most of the time. And Snyder was able to get it done. But having to travel to Penn to play them again, I think that's going to prove to be a little bit too much. And really, Penn's done it all season long. And you know what? Crown Point put up a pretty good effort. Maybe if they have Joe Hoppman playing quarterback, it's a different story. But Penn's defense really did the job, and eventually their offense was able to get going a little bit in the fourth quarter. I think Penn will. I don't think it's going to be as high of a scoring. I think it will be a lower scoring game.
Remember what I told you last week? Special teams, like what was the clinching touchdown? They had an offensive touchdown, but they also had a punt return for a touchdown too. So Penn again, special teams, I think has a huge edge in this one.
I think this is going to be. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than you said it was. I think it might be a one touchdown game, or maybe even less than that. I see Snyder closing the gap. I'm going to say Penn wins 21-14. I'm going to say it's a little bit closer, but I will say Penn punches their ticket to Indy. We'll go to the South. Final game. Center Grove at Carmel. They're in the same conference, which means they played earlier in the season, and Carmel, let's just say Carmel took care of them pretty handily.
And there's a big traveling trophy, by the way, that goes between these two schools, by the way.
I did not know that.
Yes, and by the way, this is the first postseason meeting between these two schools since the epic comeback by Center Grove in the 2008 state championship. You remember that, don't you?
Well, you know what? I'm so mad at myself about it because
you left early, didn't you?
I left in the fourth quarter. I think after Carmel scored their last touchdown,
33-14 with about 8 minutes left.
And so we thought, okay, we'll just get a little early start. This thing's over.
Oh man! And
then of course, I don't know, about halfway home in the car, listening on the radio, and they flashed the score. Like Center Grove won. I thought, what? Are you kidding me? They didn't win that game. But of course, they did win. And
36-33. The greatest comeback in state finals history. Now, it was 42-17 the first time around. That was way back in week 3 over at Greyhound Stadium. This time, the Trojans have to return back to Greyhound Stadium. Can the Trojans close the gap? I think they will, but I just think that, now we found out the injury situation. Carl actually lost one of the starting running. They got like 3 or 4 running backs that rotated in there. They lost one of them. I think the freshman with a broken leg, but they're 2 big linemen have been battling injury situations, but they're pretty much ready to go. The quarterback's posted at 3,000 yards. There's no way Carmel's going to lose this game this time. I like for the Greyhounds to win this one. It's going to be I see this one by 3 touchdowns. The Carmel is back good. They struggled last week. They held out for dear life. They had to scare their life. They are going to take care of Center Grove. I see this being a 35-14 type game. So there you go.
Thank you. I think once again, you're right about this pick too, because Center Grove hasn't played nearly as difficult on the road in the tournament as Carmel has. I think that's a huge factor. Some of the teams that Center Grove has beaten, Bedford North Lawrence, this was the team that had just won its first ever sectional championship.
Look at the losses. They got 42 in the loss to Carmel. They got 42 against Bay Day. They got 54 against Ward Central. That should be a major red flag for a Center Grove fan.
Well, it certainly is, and I'm still wondering how Carmel only scored 11 points last week. That was shocking to me, and I think Ben Davis, they went for 2 at the end of the game.
They're trying to tie the game.
Yeah. So that was a little startling to me, but I think over the course of the season, Carmel and Ben Davis and Warren Central proved to be in that upper echelon, and Center Grove seemed to have taken a step back. I don't see Center Grove going on the road and putting up enough points, scoring enough points to keep up with Carmel. Carmel's not going to score 11 points again this week. You're right, Carmel's going to probably put up at least 4 or 5 touchdowns. They're going to win this ball game. They're going to punch their ticket to state, and we're going to see a rematch of the semi-state a couple years ago between Carmel and Penn. I think we'll see that in the same
The 2 heartbreaking losses the last two times in the state finals for Carmel, where the gut-red team collapsed against Center Grove, and then they got robbed against Orange 2 years ago, if you remember. And this team's on a mission, let's be honest. I mean, last year they didn't even get out of the section when Fishers knocked them off, when Fishers had their great run. This Carmel team is on a mission. They will settle for nothing less than a state championship.
Well, that's our show for this week. JT, this is Bob, and we'll see you in state finals.